I just need to get your thoughts. I mean, give you the mic. I don't even have to ask a question. It's just about the state of baseball, the state of the CBA, the state of the season. Please talk at length. Anything you feel you really want to get off your chest on this.
Yeah, it's obviously really frustrating. I would argue one of the most alarming things about this is obviously I'm really upset. Hardcore baseball fans are really upset. I think I perhaps clearly foolishly, got kind of excited on the 28th when it looked like they were making progress, and now it kind of feels like we were all a little bit duped in that regard, which I think speaks to perhaps the strategy of the owners in a lot of ways. There's been more of a public relations move to make sure to maximize leverage strategy rather than, caring at all that people might actually want to watch baseball. So that's been really frustrating. But I have to say, the more alarming thing to me are the number of people in my life that don't care. And that is really, really worse to me. I feel listen, I'm beaten up about this. I miss baseball. I miss writing about baseball. I miss talking about baseball. I miss going to games. All the things that make baseball, the things I've loved about baseball since I was watching Willie McGee and Ozzie Smith and Tommy Herr and Jack Clark growing up. I love baseball, and for me, I don't ask much of baseball. They could literally all go on to the field wearing jerseys that say, "We hate Will Leitch. We don't like this guy. Please boo him if you see him." And I would still watch baseball. This is my favorite thing in the world. So obviously, I'm taking it hard. It's really hard not to have baseball. There's supposed to be baseball right now. It's all I ask of baseball is for it to happen. So that's obviously very frustrating. I think the reasons for it, I think we've clearly seen over what a lot of people, including Joe Sheehan, who's been a guest on your show a lot and is a mutual friend of ours, I think a lot of people finally kind of understood what he was saying all along, which is we can argue over the particulars of one side of the deal or not, but this is happening because of the owners. And I think that it's really hard to argue otherwise. So that's frustrating. But really the more worrisome part is just people got a lot going on, man. And it's not 1994 where people are there's a larger percentage of the population that is invested in baseball the way that I'm invested in baseball. There just aren't. There just aren't as many people that are doing that. I remember, I think Sam McCullough wrote a really funny piece for The Athletic where he said, Rob Manfred's press conference showed that we finally figured out a way to get baseball on ESPN and on SportsCenter. And I think that's true because even though I think baseball gets really underappreciated by the number of people that watch it, there are still more people to watch baseball than watch the NBA. And I love the NBA, but baseball is more popular than the NBA. It gets higher ratings, more people watch it, more people care about. But clearly the juice is with the NBA, obviously the juice is with the NFL, and the juice is with a lot of other stuff. And the number of it's hard enough. I feel like you know me, Bernie. I feel like I've spent the last 10 years defending baseball anyway, whether it's a steroid scandal or a cheating scandal or the game's too slow or there's not enough action, all the things that I'm like, yeah, you're right, but baseball is really wonderful. You got to give it a chance. I don't even get the chance to do that now. And so it's hard enough to sell this game when you have the people in charge of it actively making it not happen. And I think the lack of investment, the lack of concern that I see from people who kind of like baseball but are whatever, just never mind. There's a war going on. We're trying to get through COVID. There's college basketball. I'm trying to get my kids back in school. The number of pox on all their houses, which I think is unfair. By the way, this is an owner-driven thing, but I think the apathy and not even anger. I feel anger. I feel sadness and frustration that is happening. I don't think the average fan feels that. I think the average fan feels you know what, fine. I was having a hard time keeping up with baseball anyway, and that's really bad. And the fact that the owners do not realize that or are taking that for granted or think it's 1994, the fans will come back. A lot of those fans are already gone. And so it's certainly really frustrating to see the disconnect and frankly to see how much damage 14 or 15 individual rich people can how much havoc they can stop. They can just make it so the rest of us don't get to watch baseball. It's pretty frustrating. So and it's worrisome as someone who loves going to games with my kids the way that I loved going with my dad and he loved going with his dad and have always imagined this would be a tradition that I would carry on forever. I hope my kids end up still liking baseball through this, and I think there's a lot of people that feel the same way. So it's bad in a way that I don't think the people in charge even yet quite appreciate. And that's as someone that loves baseball, that's really frustrating.
You mentioned Joe Sheehan, our friend Will Leitch here. You mentioned Joe Sheehan, and I was just talking about this. His newsletter today, he opened my eyes because we know Joe, first of all, he understands the economics of this fight and all these fights. He's really good at it, like cutting to the chase, cutting to the important stuff, explaining it to people like you and I. He's excellent. Joe is definitely pro player, but he's not in the tank for anybody. But he made a point that opened my eyes today in his newsletter because he basically said, well, look, the players gave this up, they gave that up, they gave this up, they gave that up, they gave up all the big things that would have changed things in a fundamental way. Now there's a little bit left, but he made the point that basically, well, at this point where their position, what is there to fight for anymore? And I think it's a valid point, as much as we don't want to make it because this whole thing's been kind of unfair, but it is true. I don't know where the players go from here, and I wanted your opinion on that. Like, what is their end game?
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to the general frustration of this, which is two things. One, one of the really things that Joe has written about really well is that this is not like a existential moment for about they're not fighting over something existential. They're not fighting about whether there's going to be a salary cap or whether or not there's going to be a pension or some of the things that the past labor issues have been about. This is just about how to split the money. That's all this is about, and they're not dramatically that far from one another. And so what's so frustrating about it is that listen, there was to the second point, so much of this is about totally understandable animosity that players have for the owners and the way they've been treated throughout this process. I think Ross Stripling had a very great quote about how they tried to slip something past. The owners tried to slip something past them at a midnight deadline. They've just been the way that listen. Owners have the leverage in this situation, and they have wielded it in a way that seems less about getting the best deal and more about crushing the players. And the players are united. But the thing about the players being united is they're united emotionally. But as Joe has pointed out, if the owners just gave the players everything they wanted right now, it would still be a dramatically huge win for the owners. And I think that is really, really frustrating that owners can't see that or don't care about that. They really just kind of want to break the players. So that just stiffens the resolve of the players even more. So I understood Joe's point. He's totally right that there's really not a lot of places for the players to go from here. On the other hand, I certainly can't blame a player for being wait, this is how you treat us? This is how you treat us. I'm not agreeing with you about anything. And I can understand that. I think it speaks to just how much distrust there has been. And if you look at even the back and forth, all the back and forth, remember the idea of the big part of this point is about postseason money, right? How many teams are going to be in the postseason. It is worth noting that whatever your thoughts of whether this expand the postseason or not, the thing that's driving the owners to have more postseason teams is just more money. They just see more money, and I get it. There's money is money. You got to make money. This is not a charity case. It's not an art project. I get that. On the other hand, the players are hey, we should dial that back a little bit, not because they want more, not because of money, but because wait, no, baseball, you can't have everybody make the playoffs. Owners just seem to not care about that. And I feel what players are always doing is they are negotiating from a position of people that like baseball, that like baseball, and they are negotiating against people who have, whether they like baseball or whether they don't like baseball, have eliminated that from the thought process of the negotiations. And if you do that, you're negotiating against, I wouldn't say a madman, but a nihilist. If you're going into the idea of I want this because I think it's good for baseball, or it's better for competition, or better for fans, or better for the players, for future generations of players, and the response is, we don't care about any of that. We only care about winning this deal and getting as much money as possible. Like we're talking about widgets or cars or something, you can't negotiate with them on that. So I agree that players at this point, to Joe's point, that they're not going to get much more either way. All they're doing is just costing themselves and the rest of us, but they're not being baseball. On the other hand, I certainly understand why a player would be I'm giving those guys nothing. I'm giving them nothing. I've dug in a way I've never dug in before. And that is the thing that has me most worried about this. It's not just that they're not really that far apart on the issues, but they just hate each other so much. and I think that's a really dangerous place to be. And it's just frustrating because the fans are just kind of caught in the middle, those that are us that are left anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. That was really well said. And I was glad Joe Sheehan kind of opened that discussion because it needs to be had, and we'll see. The players were a group. We'll see where it goes from here. Do you? We got to talk a little baseball. I mean, seriously, we do. I mean, we got to force it. We got to force ourselves to do it.
I know.
When the Cardinals, when all of this is over and there will be baseball, what are you hoping the Cardinals will try to do, like to get their team ready as far as the roster? Or do you have any visions of grandeur, or you kind of see how they're doing this? Maybe add a relief pitcher or two, and that'll be it. I mean that's what I expect. But do you expect that, or do you think something bigger could happen?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I'm not sure anything big was gonna happen even before this. But I don't think the Cardinals are going to be the only team that say, "Hey, sorry, we lost revenue from games. It's kind of an awkward season. We're not going to spend as much money." It'll become yet another reason to not spend. So I think that I wouldn't expect it, because they've got a built-in excuse, and the Cardinals have been very eager about using those built-in excuses in the past. So I see no reason to think they wouldn't do so now. That said, I'm not sure they need to go out and spend a ton of money for. I would love to see live in an imaginary world where they go big for a Carlos Correa or something like that, but they're not going to do that. So, I certainly can imagine maybe finding maybe a swing guy, so you're not counting on like a Woodford too much, for example, like finding like another arm. I would love to see, now that the DH is official, I feel like someone like Kyle Schwarber is perfect for what the Cardinals are doing with the DH. They need that kind of left-handed bat. You could sign him for 1 year or even a 2-year contract and not really be too far behind. It's just so out of their personality at this point, and it was out of their personality even in a perfect world, in an age where, frankly, I think when I talked about the 15 so people kind of holding up baseball, I'm not sure the Cardinals are necessarily not part of that. So, and the Cardinals are just not necessarily part of that. So I think the idea that they're going to come out guns blazing, I think the ownership groups, they don't like Steve Cohen's, right? They don't want people that are going to, that's what the CBT thing is all about. The competitive balance tax is all about. That's what they're trying to fight. So to see the Cardinals come out of this, well, I think they're frankly kind of one of the teams that are taking a little bit of a hard line in negotiation. The idea they're going to come out and spend a bunch of money out of this would be pretty surprising.
Yeah, I think Bill DeWitt is catching some heat because people know he's prominent in this whole setup, and maybe Rob Manfred's closest ally. I mean, I can't say that factually, but I'm pretty familiar with the relationship. And Ben Hochman, I thought, wrote a good column the other day, and we're talking about it. And I like DeWitt. I mean, I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's been great for Cardinal baseball.
Cardinals are in a much better position with them as owners. Like, it's hard to argue with the success they've had over the last 20 years. But, there's no baseball happening right now. And I think that he's very much – he is close to Manfred. He's close to Steeler. I think he's even closer to Manfred. And I think that and I think this is one of the things – it's very fun to point at Manfred because he's awkward and his smile at the press conference and the golf swing and all that stuff. But, you got to remember that, he's – people always say this about Roger Goodell. Don't get mad at Roger Goodell. Get mad at his 32 bosses who are letting him take the hits so they don't have to. And I think that you see that a little bit with Manfred as well.
You're absolutely right. Well, if the MLB owners and the commissioner cost Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina that all-time major league record for most starts, pitcher catcher, one team, that's it. You know how everybody says, "I'm done with baseball." I might have to be done after that. So,
we're the ones that are not going to be done, but there are not many of us left, I'm afraid.
I know. Hey, listen, be well, man. It was really great to hear your voice and talk a little bit. I appreciate you very much.
Of course, and once I get this thing settled in July, maybe, we'll get back to doing the show again. I missed that.
We absolutely will. There's no question about it. Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Take care, sir.
And by the way, congratulations to your Georgia Bulldogs for winning the national championship.
Oh, people are still running naked through the street around here.
All right. Take care,
Thanks,
Will.
Freddie.
All right, that's our really good friend Will Leitch here on the Bernie Show. So isn't it fun to listen to him again? And you notice I didn't. I'm usually very long-winded asking questions with him. It was just just go. I know you got a lot to say. He's hysterical, but I thought he nailed it really well, and I think he nailed it his interpretation of some of the Joe Sheehan stuff, which, again, is another reason why people should subscribe to the newsletter, because he always gives you stuff to think about just when I think I've got something figured out, and I've kind of looked at it from every angle, and then Joe comes in whoosh, and it's oh, wait a minute. I didn't really think of it that way. So he's good. And it's not a good time for Joe either. That's why I was trying to get him on the show this week, and we'll get him on next week or whenever he can do it. Because I always like to try to at least pump up his newsletter because it's so essential to me, and I look forward to it every day. And we got to sell some subscriptions for me. And it's tough. Because people are just so sick of baseball and what's going on. This is an example of how it affects other people. And again, Joe Sheehan will be the first to tell you because he wrote it. Kind of like, well, look, I'm fine. I'm not freaking out about anything. I'm fine. But he admitted, he's losing a lot of subscriptions because he's not getting the renewals, and it's not because of his work. And some of the people that are dropping the newsletter, have been with him for a long time, but they're just so fed up with everything. There's a lot of collateral damage, and Joe Sheehan writing a newsletter that's really informative for fans, and he really serves the fans, and the subscription price is very reasonable, but he's getting hit financially through no doing of his own. And just like the stadium workers are, and just like the people that work at the spring training sites and the small businesses in Arizona and Florida, and the small businesses, non-team related businesses that are around all these ballparks in Major League Baseball. There is absolutely collateral damage, and that makes it even more frustrating. I know I'm stating the obvious, but I just wanted to say that one more time about it affects a lot of people that don't wear a uniform, play baseball, or sit in an owner's suite. It affects a lot of people.
Yeah, it sure does. 100% true on that. Oh.
So anyway, we've enjoyed talking to all of our good friends today. And then tomorrow we got a 2-hour show.
That is correct.
I know you were full of surprises today, Hewer.
That's a good thing.
Now you put out a schedule.
Yesterday we were the bearer of bad tidings, but today I was better.
Yeah, you snuck that one by me. I like it.
Yeah.
See, that's why I don't like you send the schedule out. I don't read it because I'm my brain's going in 30,000 different directions. But I've actually decided now I don't really want to read the schedule. I'd rather have you surprise me and say, hey, just a reminder, tomorrow it's a 2-hour show. And I'm like, oh, all right. So
jackpot. There you go.